Chapter 6. It was my first day in the palace and the first time I had met the king of Brobdingnag. He looked angry and confused, as if he did not know what to think of this strange little person who the queen had bought from a farmer. So he decided he should ask for the advice of the best scholars in the land. 3 important-looking men arrived and they examined me carefully. I could understand how a man can be so small and yet stay alive in our country. Said one. The man isn't very strong or very fast. His teeth are too small to eat anything without help, unless he eats insects. Said another. I explained to them and the king that there were many people like me in my country, and that we lived and ate as easily as the people of their land. The scholars laughed. But that's impossible. He must have been taught to say this by the farmer. Said the oldest and wisest scholar. When the king heard this, he asked to see the farmer at once, who, by chance, was still in the city. When the farmer arrived, the king asked him, his daughter and the queen more questions about me. After a time, he said, "It seems my scholars are wrong and what you tell me about your own country is true. The queen can keep you. I can see that Glumdalclitch likes you greatly, so I don't mind if she stays here as your teacher." Glumdalclitch was very pleased and was given her own room in the palace, as well as her own teacher and 2 servants. The queen asked the palace carpenter to make me a comfortable home, the size of the box that I had been carried in by the farmer. This he did, and soon I had a lovely house with a front door and large windows. The roof could be lifted so that a comfortable bed could be put inside. I also had 2 little chairs, 2 tables and some cupboards to put things in. The walls were soft, so that when anyone carried the house I would not hurt myself. A key, the smallest thing ever made in the palace, was made for my door, so I could lock it and stop any rats or insects from entering. Glumdalclitch said she would look after the key, but I asked to keep it in my pocket. The key fitted comfortably in my hand, but to Glumdalclitch it was tiny and I worried she would lose it. They also made me some new clothes which, although they used the best cotton, felt rough and uncomfortable. The queen was now very friendly to me and asked for me to sit with her when she ate her meals in the dining room. I always sat at a small table by her arm and ate from a silver plate. We usually ate with Glumdalclitch and the queen's 2 daughters, who were aged 16 and 13. It was strange for me to see them eat. A meal for one of the daughters was big enough to feed 20 farmers in my country. Every Wednesday, the king would join us. He enjoyed talking to me and asked me all about what we did for entertainment, how we worked and where we lived. One night, he listened to me talk and then began to laugh. Then he turned to an advisor and said, "You know, I cannot believe that people who are so small can have houses and cities, clothes and jobs, rewards and prizes, arguments and fights." When I realized that he was laughing at my own country, I began to feel angry. I also understood, however, that I was too small to do anything about it. Most people in the palace were kind to me, but there was one servant who did not like me. One day, when no one was looking, he picked me up and dropped me into a bowl of cream and then ran away as quickly as he could. The cream was cold and very thick, and it is lucky that I am a good swimmer or I would have drowned. It was Glumdalclitch who rescued me by pulling me out of the thick liquid just in time. I felt ill after my accident, and was put to bed, and when the queen heard what had happened, she punished the servant by making him wash all the cream from my clothes. To this day, I have never liked eating cream. The punishment did not stop the same servant trying another cruel trick a few days later. We had just finished eating some meat, and on Glumdalclitch's plate there was a large bone with a hole down the middle. When no one was looking, the servant picked me up and pushed my legs into the hole, before standing the bone up on the plate. So when Glumdalclitch came back into the dining room, there I was, high above the plate with both my legs inside the bone, unable to move. Glumdalclitch laughed as she took me out, but I did not find it funny. A bigger problem for me, however, was bees. These enormous insects came into the palace during the summer when the windows were open and we ate fruit or sweet things. The queen thought I was not very brave because I was frightened of these insects, but although they were nothing to her, they were very dangerous to me. One day, when I was eating some cake in my home, 3 bees flew in through my window. One of them carried a cake away and the others flew around my head. I pulled out my sword and attacked them, cutting off their stings, and eventually they flew away. I quickly closed the window, although it was hot and there was not much air. One day, the king asked me to sit down so he could talk to me. "Let me tell you more about my country," he said. "In the north there are mountains that are 40 kilometers high. You can't pass these mountains because many of them are volcanoes. No one in Brobdingnag knows what lies north of them. The rest of my land has sea all around it, but there isn't one harbor in all the country. The seas are all so rough that it isn't safe for boats to go out into them, so we've never traveled to other countries. Our rivers are full of fish, so we don't need to go fishing in the seas." He then told me that there were 51 cities in his country and a great many towns and villages. The capital city, Lorbrelgrad, lay on a river and had 80,000 houses. I found all this information very interesting and asked if I could see more of his land. On some days, Glumdalclitch took me out with her for rides on her horse through the city and into the parks. She carried me in a special box that the queen's carpenter had made for me. Inside the box was a table and 2 chairs, fastened to the floor so that they did not move. People in the city knew who we were and often asked to see me, and Glumdalclitch took me out of the box and put me in her hand while the people pointed and smiled at me. One day, Glumdalclitch carried my box with me inside and went into the palace gardens. She then took me out of the box and put me down on the ground under some apple trees while she went for a walk. Meanwhile, the servant who had put me in the bowl of cream was watching me, although I did not realize this at the time. When he saw that I was under the trees, alone, he shook the branches and about 12 apples fell down. One of them hit me on the back and another hit my face, but luckily I was not badly hurt. The servant laughed out loudly before running away again without anyone seeing him but me. I had many other accidents in that garden, always when Glumdalclitch had left me alone. Once, a bird almost picked me up before I frightened it away with my sword. Another time, I fell into a huge hole that had been made by some animal and found it very difficult to get out of it. On another day, Glumdalclitch went for a walk through the gardens and left me on the grass. Suddenly, it began to hail. Each hailstone was the size of a tennis ball and it hurt greatly when they hit me. I was quickly knocked to the ground, and it was lucky that I found a tree to hide under, or I would have surely died. I had so many bruises that I could not walk for many days. My worst accident, however, happened one morning when Glumdalclitch was in another part of the garden. A dog arrived and, smelling me immediately, quickly took me in its mouth before I could run away. The dog then ran to its master, who worked in the gardens. Luckily, the dog dropped me by its master's feet, and he quickly picked me up before the dog could do me any damage. The gardener asked me if I was all right and ran up to Glumdalclitch to tell her what had happened. She was horrified, but she did not tell the queen, thinking she would be angry. From that moment, Glumdalclitch promised that she would never leave me alone again, although this was not something that I was pleased to hear. I was, of course, pleased to have her friendship and to have her help and protect me, but I also needed my own space and freedom. One day, I was with the queen in the palace and was telling her about my travels on the seas. "You must be a good sailor," she said. "Perhaps you'd like to have your own boat? Then you could show us what you can do." "I would love that," I told her. "However, I can't use any of the boats in your land because of their size. I'd need a special one that was much smaller." "Very well," she replied. "I'll ask the palace carpenter to make you one." A few days later, I was given a small sailing boat, beautifully made from hard wood. At first, the queen suggested that I sailed the boat in a bath, but there was not much room, even for so tiny a ship, so she asked her servants to make me a small lake in her gardens. The queen and her ladies liked to watch me sailing up and down this small lake, and they sometimes waved their hands around to make a breeze which allowed me to sail more quickly. I enjoyed these sailing trips, although danger was never far away. One day, a frog jumped into the lake and made a wave that was so big that it nearly turned over my boat. The queen grabbed me to stop this happening, and each day, after I had finished sailing, she picked up the boat and put it on a nail on the wall in the garden, where it could dry in the sun. The biggest danger for me at that time, however, was from a monkey who belonged to one of the servants. I was sitting inside my house with the windows open one morning when I heard a noise. I looked out of the windows and saw the monkey exploring the room where my house had been put. When he saw my house, he looked pleased and ran up to take a closer look. He then saw me through the windows and tried to reach me with his long arms. I tried to hide, but eventually the monkey got hold of my jacket and pulled me towards him. He held me in his arms, as a mother does with a baby, and when I tried to escape, he squeezed me so hard that I thought it was best not to move. At that moment Glumdalclitch opened the door into the room, so the monkey quickly jumped out of the window and climbed up onto the roof of the palace, still holding me with one hand. "Quick! The monkey's got hold of Grilrig. He's going onto the roof," I heard Glumdalclitch shout behind me. Soon servants were running outside with long wooden ladders. However, by this time the monkey was sitting at the highest point of the roof, holding me like a baby and trying to feed me some nuts that it had found. When I did not eat them, the monkey patted me gently. Some of the servants could see what the monkey was doing to me, and I could hear them laughing far below. Shortly after, I heard some of the servants climbing up the ladders, but it was clear that the ladders would only reach the bottom of the roof, some distance from where the monkey sat. Hearing the servants getting nearer, however, the monkey got worried and decided to put me down before quickly running away. I was now sitting alone at the very top of a roof which was, for me, as high as a mountain. It was a very long way down to the bottom of the roof where the servants were, and even further to the ground. I felt the wind now blowing strongly on my face. I prayed that the servants could get me down before the wind blew me off the roof.